do this. Okay. Bam. Okay. We
Can you hear me, bro?
I can hear you super good. Super good. What's up, family? How y'all
How's
doing?
that?
We giving y'all some time to load up, get up in here. Come on, we got this interview going on. Let's do what we do, people. And this is finna be that real deal Holyfield right here, y'all. The real deal Holyfield. And like I said, we got Greg and Reggie both on the phone. Not yes, we do. Greg and Reggie both are on the phone right now as we speak. What's up? What's up? How you doing? I see y'all coming in. Y'all getting my notes together, y'all. You know, great. They've been waiting on me for a minute, so let's get this together here. Do what we do. Okay.
You give out Greg his shots to what he has.
Okay.
Appreciate that.
So, Greg, how you doing? How you doing, Greg? Kading, how you doing? How you doing, Reggie Wright? How you boys doing?
Greg Kading is doing good, alive and well, and looking forward to 2018. It's going to be a fantastic year.
Let's
And I'm about to make y'all mad. We out here in this 85 degrees weather out here in sunny California. Well, y'all out there probably in some snow and stuff, and we out here having a good time.
Hey man, you could have kept that to yourself, man, because it is snowing up here
Yep,
in
yep.
Detroit, man. You could have kept
That
that one.
that's what they call TMI, man, for sure. That's just way
Yeah.
too much information. And hey, when you got a guy that's glad to see the blue skies and ain't looking at the wall,
Hey.
that's true. I want to enjoy it.
Okay,
I'm
people.
looking at mountains right now. Make me happy.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
that's all good. We finna get down to business now. So, Greg, you ready? You are on the 313 Live Show, Detroit's rawest podcast show. And over here on the 313 Live Show, Greg, let me tell you, we don't dance around the bush, no, dance around the questions, beat around the bush. You know, we get straight to the shit. Now, if we say something, you know what I'm saying, I ask a question, you don't feel comfortable asking it, just, say, hey, I'm not going to answer that, and we're going to walk away from it and keep it moving. Just say, hey, I asked it, it's on the record, you didn't want to answer it, and it's all good. So
There's nothing off limits, man. You ask anything you want to ask, and I'm gonna give you the real on the response.
okay, now let's talk. It's my first question I want to ask. The very first question is this. Okay, now Russell Poole had this case. He had the Biggie Smalls case and the Tupac case, I guess, all rolled up in one. He had them both running with him. How did he get off the case, and how did you get on it?
Okay, so just to clarify, Poole was never an investigator of the Tupac Shakur case.
Okay.
He was one of the primary investigators, him and his partner, Fred Miller. They inherited the case back in 1997, a month after Biggie got killed. There were some Wilshire detectives, a guy named Kelly Cooper, who was the original investigator on Biggie's killing. And then because of the resources and manpower was going to require, the case was transferred to Robbery Homicide Division from the LAPD, which is when Fred Miller and Russell Poole, his partner, inherited the case. Okay. So they're on it a month after the fact, and then Russell ends up being one of those primary investigators for about the next 9 months.
Okay.
Well, during that time, of course, we all knew that there was a probability or a possibility that the Tupac Shakur murder and the Biggie murder might be related. And so as investigators, you're kind of keeping that all into consideration. But Poole was never actually functioning as an investigator in Tupac's murder. He was just sharing information back and forth with Vegas because everybody thought potentially these cases were related. And so Poole had it for like 9 months. He got into a little bit of trouble at work over some policy issues. And at some point, the department decided they needed to transfer him out of Robbery Homicide Division. He went back to South Bureau Homicide and was off the case. So he had it for 9 months. But those were critical 9 months. Okay. It's still in that window of a fresh murder. And he started to listen to some jailhouse informants that were just feeding him a bunch of bullshit that he tended to believe. And unfortunately, nobody else around him was buying this shit. And he got frustrated and ultimately just walked away from the job because he couldn't convince anybody that these conclusions he had drawn were valid. And, unfortunately, as time went on and these informants came forward and admitted that they had all been lying, and the information that they were providing was refuted and disproved, that it was too late. The damage was done for Russell Poole, and you can never recover from that. I had the benefit of the hindsight.
Mm-hmm.
I knew what these guys had said, and I knew that they had lied, and I knew the information that they provided was erroneous. So I had the benefit of nearly 10 more years of investigative work at my disposal. And so I was in a much more balanced position. I was in a position to be a little bit more objective, I think, and not get led down those rabbit holes because I had already seen what happened to him.
Okay.
So it was a benefit to me to kind of be in that position of seeing how convoluted things got and being able to look at things, I think, with a little bit more of a clearer perspective.
Okay.
Hey, Real, I think a good question right after that, and I'm not trying to take over the interview, but I just things that I want to try to add to it is that to ask Greg why the task force was assembled and the different agencies that was involved in the task force, because the one thing that keeps going out, and Russell and RJ and JMX always try to put out, is that Mr. Poole was a great cop, and all the bad cops got on the case and took over the case and all of that, which is so far from the truth.
Okay.
And I'll let Greg explain why the task force and the different agencies that was involved in this task force was assembled.
Yeah, give us that.
Even though Greg was the leader of the task force.
Okay, yeah, tell us that, Greg.
Okay, so, all right, so what ended up happening, this whole thing's kind of ironic because Russell Poole, because of his beliefs and some of the conclusions that he had drawn, of course, he gets together with a writer. They publish the book Labyrinth. Labyrinth, kind of becomes, for the public, from a public perception, they believe it's a plausible explanation to the murder of Biggie Smalls. So it gets some traction. A lawyer finds out about it. He reads it. He's, thinking, well, if this is true, then the LAPD is liable, for the murder of Biggie Smalls. And so most people know the theory behind Russell Poole about some dirty cops being involved. Well, that lawyer then approaches Biggie Smalls' mom and says, hey, if this is true, if what is in this book is true, then, you should sue the LAPD and we should, get justice, or we should at least get compensated for these allegations. So that leads to a massive lawsuit against the department and the city. And it's in and out of the courts it's filed in 2002. It's in and out of the courts for several years. And ultimately, the department says, let's put together a group of people, some qualified investigators, and reevaluate this case and all of the claims in this case. So I get invited into Robbery Homicide Division. I was working major narcotics at the time, and I had a reputation for being a competent investigator. And I get there, and I realize that, man, there's so much work to be done because we have to go back and unravel all of these things that have been promoted for so many years. And we start to theorize about what could have happened and look at the evidence to support those theories. And I realized that in order for us to, no matter what conclusions we come up with at the end of the day, we have to have the credibility of people outside of the LAPD, because if the LAPD is being accused of being involved, and we come along just as the LAPD and says, hey, you know what, we're not involved. Well, fuck, that's going to fall on deaf ears. No one's going to believe that. You can't exonerate yourself. And so I said the best thing for us to do is get these other agencies, the United States Attorney's Office, the FBI, the DEA, the ATF, and other municipal agencies, let's all combine forces. And that way, whatever conclusions we ended up drawing, it has the credibility of all those agencies together. So that we can't, nobody's going to plausibly be able to say, hey, everybody's conspiring to cover up. This doesn't work that way. And So we've got all of these different agencies with kind of different skill sets and resources to contribute, and it just seems like the best way to approach the investigation. So we had a 16-member task force with people from all those agencies, and we brought together our experience and skills, and began to strategize on how to investigate this thing. And of course, we drew the conclusions we drew based on the evidence that we gathered, and that's where we're at today.
Okay.
I have one more question, Will, and then I'll shut up.
Go ahead.
The other question I had, Greg, was why did since y'all was under the umbrella of the DEA, which is a federal agency, did Las Vegas PD Homicide Division get invited to be on the team, or was y'all just mainly dealing with the homicide in LA, and that was only the reason that y'all just concentrated with LA officers?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the way that evolved was, our focus was Biggie. It was an LA murder. That was our responsibility within the LAPD. We had that jurisdiction, and we're facing this lawsuit. So that was our primary, objective, was to solve that. But in the process of solving that, we stumble upon Keefe D from the Southside Crips, and he begins to unravel what took place in Las Vegas. So now we are like, holy smokes, now we're right in the middle of the Las Vegas investigation. We've got a co-conspirator admitting to his involvement and explaining everything and how it went down, and it's all being kind of corroborated by separate information and evidence. And we're like, shit, I think we just solved the Tupac murder. And by this point in time, we're like, okay, well, we're going to utilize Keefe D as an informant and get him to help us further that investigation. And because of what he told us about the conspiracy being initiated in Los Angeles, it then gave us some jurisdictional control over claiming that investigation. Mm-hmm. And so the decision was made that we're going to kind of manage it in-house for the time being, and that's what we did. We used TPD to further that case, and we could claim jurisdictional rights because the conspiracy started in L.A., even though the murder happened in Las Vegas. If that makes sense to y'all.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Now, I heard you mention Keefe D, and I was going to ask about this because someone just asked in the chat. Okay, what was Keefe D? Do you consider him to be a credible witness or informant, or do you think he lied to you guys on some of the some things?
Keefe D is a murderer. Keefe D is a co-conspirator in the murder of Tupac Shakur. He admitted to that. His information was corroborated. He is not a suspect. He's a murderer.
Okay.
But we believe what he had to say. He was under very compelling circumstances in order to cooperate with us. And based on that engagement or that agreement, he provided us the details of what took place in Las Vegas. And his explanation makes perfect sense. It lines up with all the known evidence. So we absolutely believe that what he was telling us was the truth.
Okay. Now let me ask you this, because I spoke with Tupac's cousin, and his cousin William Lassane, he clearly stated that Tupac, the person who came out of the Cadillac and was shooting, had that of an arm of a big man. He was a bigger guy, muscular to heavyset guy. And that was the guy that did the shooting. Okay, as we all know, Orlando Anderson does not fit that description. Do you, in your notes or in your investigating, do you believe that Orlando Anderson was the shooter, or there was another guy that was in the car that actually did the shooting?
All right, so let me back that up a little bit, and just quickly, I'll say that I absolutely believe it was Orlando Anderson. Okay. And big props to William Lassane. I love the man. Met him, and he's good people. But he wasn't there.
Okay.
William Lassane was not in Las Vegas. He did not witness this, and he might be hearing information from maybe one of the outlaws that was a car behind in the dark during all this chaos.
Mm-hmm.
So he doesn't know. He's just reiterating something that somebody else told him, and that somebody else probably wasn't even a witness. So, and nothing against William. Like I said, he's good people. I love the guy. But just because he claims something, that doesn't really resonate with me, because I'm talking to the people that were actually there and witnessed it.
Okay.
So I think there's a discrepancy maybe in the conclusions people draw. And let's just say it's the big guy that he claims. Well, who would that be? Well, according to Keith D, DeAndre Smith. He's a known shooter. He's a bad guy. He's a Southside Crip. He was in that car in the back of the Cadillac and was the closest person to Tupac.
Okay.
So, but when we talked to Keith D, and he says that it was my nephew Orlando.
Mm-hmm.
Well, at that point in time, Orlando was dead.
Right.
But guess what?
What's that?
So was DeAndre Smith.
So DeAndre Smith
So
is
if
dead.
you're going to throw...
Mm-hmm.
He's dead by the time we get this confession. So if DeAndre Smith is the actual shooter,
Mm-hmm.
doesn't it make sense that you'd rather throw him under the bus than your nephew, your family member?
Of course.
They're both dead. Why not throw the guy under the bus that isn't going to impact you the way it is to say, my nephew did it?
Okay.
His mother is your sister.
Mm-hmm.
Your kids are his cousins. You're not going to do that. And this is one of the reasons KPD has run into so much family problems since his confession has been made public. It's created tremendous complications for his life because he ratted out his own nephew.
Okay. Now, with that being said, have anybody ever tried to kill Keefe D or try to put a hit on him behind any of this?
Well, there was just a general green light on during the gang war that arose directly after Tupac's shooting. Of course, there was a green light on all Southside Crips. That's how gangs work.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, the motherfuckers responsible for this? Southside was out there? They did this? It's green light on all of them. But of course, Southside knows this and anticipates it, so they're preparing themselves. They're loading up their weapons. They're staying off the street. They're holding back. And this is just the way it happens in these gang conflicts. And so it's very hard to get to somebody.
Mm-hmm.
If you and I have a problem and you live in a neighborhood where everybody's looking out for you, if I come into that neighborhood looking for you, I'm probably going to be the one full of bullets.
Okay.
Because that's just the way this works. To track down Orlando Anderson and get at him, or to track down Keefe D and get at him, it's not as easy as just saying, I know their address, let's go get them. They're going into their neighborhoods where everybody's looking out for one another. And you're as likely to get shot as you are to be able to carry out, your intentions.
Mm.
And that's what people just don't understand about how these things work. It's much more difficult than they think.
Okay. No.
But yes, KPD was let me just add to this. KPD was certainly a target because Suge Knight looked him right in the eyes at the time of the shooting. When that Cadillac pulled up along the BMW, KPD leaned forward. He looked directly out the driver's window of the Cadillac. Suge Knight's looking out the passenger window of the BMW. They lock eyes. They've known each other since they were kids. And right away, Suge Knight reported back to his mom, Pyru homeboys, like, yo, it's at Southside, KPD and his boys.
Wow.
So, of course, KPD is as important as Orlando Anderson in the mind of those guys.
Okay, now let me say this here. Okay, now it's quite clear that the LAPD is pretty much you guys are putting this together and pretty much solved it. Would you say Vegas? They probably don't give a fuck about the case, or they were too incompetent to want to deal with this case?
Well, I think that originally there was a lot of frustration on their part because they've got a dead celebrity.
Mm-hmm.
There's a tremendous amount of pressure on them to solve this case. But yet all of the people that you would expect to be stepping forward and providing information and wanting to see this solved are the same people that are refusing to talk to you and give you details and tell you what you need to know in order to to move forward in the investigation. You know, you've got this gang culture, and the gang culture is that we don't cooperate with law enforcement. We'll handle this shit ourselves. And so for Vegas PD to be talking to people that are in a position to know what happened, and then those same people are saying, sorry, we're either not going to talk to you or we're going to tell you that, you know, we're going to give you some wrong information. And so at some point, an agency is like, hey, we're just spinning our wheels. The right people aren't telling us things we need to know. What are we supposed to do? You know, we weren't there. We rely on the witnesses. And if the witnesses aren't helping, there's very little you can do. We didn't have any, we didn't have any hard, tangible evidence.
Mm-hmm.
And so Vegas is frustrated. And so unfortunately, like so many game cases, they grow cold and then they just get set on the shelf.
Okay. Now let me ask this right here for you. Okay, I gotta ask this question. Okay, at any given time, you know how somebody I may have killed someone and I bragged about it and told a girlfriend, some friends. At any given time, did anybody from Orlando Anderson camp outside of Keefe D, like an ex-girlfriend, a baby mama, or somebody that was mad at him, come to you guys and say, yo, Orlando Anderson did this and he confessed about it and he's bragging?
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that because Terrence Brown, the driver of the white Cadillac,
mm-hmm.
he was bragging that he had done the shooting. DeAndre Smith, the passenger in the backseat with Orlando Anderson, he was claiming that he had done the shooting. Got Orlando Anderson, of course, he's running around telling people that he did it, all the way to the point where KPD had to check in and say, yo, man, you need to keep your fucking mouth shut. You're at these barbecues, these get-togethers, talking about smoking Tupac, and, you know, brighten up. It's fine for the neighborhood to know that, but when it gets beyond that, we're going to have problems. And so everybody in that car was, you know, alluding to the fact that they shot and killed Tupac. But it makes the most sense, and based on Keefe D's confession, that it was Orlando Anderson, because Orlando Anderson is the one who just hours before dealt with Tupac in a very personal way.
Yeah.
So, you know, if you and I, you know, my friends, we go out and we're going to retaliate, and there's somebody that assaulted me directly, well, I'm going to be leading that charge. I'm going to be the front man. Okay. So that's my issue, and Orlando Anderson is going to shoot Tupac Shakur just on principle.
Okay. Now we go back. Okay, we let's talk about the East Coast, West Coast bad boy death row thing. Okay, at any given point in time, did you guys find any truth that Sean Puffy Combs actually put $1 million hit out on Tupac and Suge for the Southside Crips to take them out? Was there any truth to that? Did you find anything?
Yes. Well, we knew of the conflict that had been brewing for years, all the way back to 662.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we got lost here. We got lost. They're gonna call back in. They're gonna call back in. Hey, I'm trying to get to all the right questions, everybody. I'm trying to get to these hard questions, the hardcore questions. You know what I'm saying? We waiting them out. Wow. So far, what you guys think of the interview so far? Mm-hmm. Okay, they full of shit. Mindstrap say they full of shit. Okay. Cat Eyes Philly, it's okay. Okay. David, great show. Get them real. Okay. I think, let me see. Looking at the Apple Watch, like somebody's. That ain't nobody calling in. Okay. We here. Okay, they lying. Okay. We trying to see, baby. Okay. A1. The street knows. Okay. Just tuned in. Okay. We're trying to wait them out. We're not going to call them. We're going to let them call back in. Tupac alive. what's his Andrew? Okay, you say Tupac is alive. You know, I hear a lot of people say Tupac alive, and they say that no one has shown any proof that Tupac is really dead. Okay, that might be true. But what actual proof have you guys shown us that Tupac is still alive outside of some fucking Photoshop pictures and a couple videos that you didn't know if it was, you couldn't even tell the person was allegedly supposed to be Tupac? What proof have you guys shown us? Why you guys always asking what proof have we shown you? What proof have you guys shown us? Let's not all speak at once. Not all the Tupac alive. Let's get it together. Come on. Let me ask one question while we waiting on this call to come back through. Out of 22 years, going on 22 years, right? We saying that Tupac didn't have a weed man or several weed men. Tupac didn't fuck no women. Now, you know when you piss off a woman, especially a black woman, if Tupac was alive and she sucked his dick or fucked him, you honestly think that she wasn't gonna go to the go and let people know? Come on now, let's keep it real. Okay. This is real talk. That's all I'm saying. Now, ain't no real, real niggas ain't gonna go out and say I killed Tupac. Hell no. That's not gonna happen. I'm trying to keep my line clear. Know what I'm saying? So we can get them back in. Okay, here's Reggie calling in. Bam. Okay. Let me get him. Get him up here, y'all. Hold on. Damn, I made a mistake of sending Reggie the voicemail. Okay, here we go. Yes, I did. Let me get him. Motherfucker. You see him? I got other people calling in, and I'm trying to get him to call in. Come on now. Chill out. Okay, let's get the interview back on. Thank you. Yeah. Hello?
We back on.
Yo.
Yeah, I don't know how we lost you.
Yeah. Okay.
We back on.
Okay, we all back on? Okay. Now, where were we?
Yes, sir.
Greg? Okay, yeah, Greg. Yeah, we was asking about the Sean Puffy Combs. Allegedly, he put the $1 million hit out. Like I said, did you find any truth in that?
Yeah, so I went on about a 5-minute rant that evidently I was talking to myself.
Yeah, keep it.
What point did I cut out at?
I know you cut out. You had just started talking and y'all went dead, and I'm like, what's going on here?
All right. So I talked about the conflicts at the 3 different levels that was going on and all that, or should I just restate the whole damn thing?
Just restate the whole thing.
All right. So here's what we found out.
Okay.
We looked at the evolution of the conflict that had been taking place between Combs and Suge Knight, Bad Boy, Death Row, and their artists, Pac and Big, and then, of course, the gangs that they associated with, the Southside Crips and the Mob Piru. And you see these, ever since way back when Sean Combs wanted to have, or Suge Knight, wanted to have Biggie perform at 662, and Sean wanted half the door. That kind of rubbed, Suge Knight the wrong way. And this is just the beginning of the aggravation that was brewing between them. And then, of course, you end up with, the quad shooting. That's a, conflict between Biggie and Tupac and also Combs. And then you've got Jake Robles getting killed in Atlanta, where Suge Knight's best friend and bodyguard gets killed by one of Buffy Combs' people. And so this growing conflict that's involving CEOs and the rappers and then the gangs that they affiliate with. It's just 3 levels of conflict that just is getting more and more out of control to where people are being shot and killed. There's conflicts backstage. You got the lyrics going on, dissing each other. And it was just a natural recipe for disaster. And so then in December of 1995, when Sean Combs becomes aware that Suge Knight had accosted one of his producers out here in Los Angeles, essentially kidnapping this guy and beating him and threatening to kill him in order for him to turn over Sean Combs' Los Angeles address and the place where his family might be, Combs becomes aware of that, and he's scared and desperate. He's knowing that there's a target on his back, and if he doesn't do something, that it's just a matter of time. And so he tells Keefe D, he says, "Listen, whatever the fuck it takes, man, handle this business for me. I can't not go to California." And so, he's talking to a guy that doesn't hesitate to take care of that kind of thing. But I think it's important to understand the frame of mind of Sean Combs at the time and the culture at the time and what's going on the streets at the time, and realizing that what he did is not completely unreasonable. It's like, if any of our lives are threatened, we're going to take action. We're going to be preemptive about it. And, if he's aligned with people who can help protect him and he makes a desperate statement like that, those people just may go out and carry it out as they did. And especially when you give them a motive, like a beatdown in Las Vegas, of one of those very same members of that gang. And so the whole thing makes perfect sense, but I would say that it's probably the biggest regret that Puffy Combs lives with, is that he faces the fact every day that he made a desperate statement to somebody, that led to a murder, and then that led to a retaliation, and now Biggie Smalls is dead as a result of that.
Okay. Now, I did an interview with Gene Deal. Okay, Puffy's former bodyguard that was there the night that Biggie got killed. And he said that Puffy said this out of his own words: "It's like the motherfucker spoke this shit into existence. I don't care if Tupac gotta die, I don't care if Big gotta die, and I don't give a fuck if Suge gotta go to jail." And it came out, it happened. Pac dead, Biggie dead, Suge is in jail. So at any point, did anybody even try to question Sean Puffy Combs about his involvement, or he got him a lawyered up and nothing happened?
Yeah, so early on, after Biggie died, investigators did talk to Sean. Sean basically, was very vague and non-committal. He gave just general information. He acted like he really didn't even know Zip, and of course we all know how close him and Zip were. He acted like he had no association with anybody from any gangs. Well, we all know that was untrue. And so Sean, I think, realized that if they start digging really deep into Biggie's murder, they're probably going to figure out what happened in Las Vegas, too. And I can't be associated with that. And so he played a delicate game of, well, I'm kind of cooperating, but I'm not fully cooperating, because that's just going to get me in trouble. And as time went on, I think he realized, this wasn't going away, and there were, future attempts to interview him by homicide investigators. That's when he really needed to get his lawyers involved to even a higher degree than he had previously. So there were always lawyers involved. And, he just wanted to insulate himself around legal protection. And I think that we would, again, it's a smart thing to do. If you have any culpability, you don't want to expose yourself.
Okay.
But if you don't have any culpability, then you don't need lawyers.
Most
You don't need to hide behind anybody. You should be stepping forward and saying, "Yo, I got $100,000 and putting out for any information leading to Biggie." Well, we didn't see that. Everybody needs to step up and help me solve. We got to make justice for Biggie. We don't see that. What we see is Sean Combs not doing what you would naturally do for a person who's innocent and wants to see justice on behalf of a deceased friend.
Okay. Now I gotta ask you this question: Is we know who put this ridiculous rumor out, and I want to ask you this. I want to put it on record. If you don't want to ask it, you don't answer it. You don't have to answer it, but I'm gonna ask it. The night of the shooting down at the casino, in Vegas of Tupac, were you working the casino that night?
In 1996. And I'm not even sure I knew these guys' names. And I've certainly never worked in Las Vegas under any circumstances. That's just laughable. It really is. It's like this whole thing with Reggie's dad. Like, no, look, Reggie Wright Sr. was in Vegas because this picture kind of resembles him. But look, there's a bicycle cop that looks like Greg Kading. It's utter fucking foolishness. It's such desperate nonsense for people that are out there trying to connect dots that don't exist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. Now I'm asking. Okay, now I got a couple questions I'm going to ask. Some people want me to ask these questions. Okay, where we at here? Okay, the mysterious gun. Okay, the mystery gun. Okay, this allegedly supposed to had made it to Vegas 1 minute, then 1 minute Vegas say it didn't make it. Is that true about this mysterious gun that Ben Crump and them say that the ballistic test came back as being the actual gun of shooting Tupac Shakur, but it was destroyed?
I think Crump is just clowning. I think he knows better, but it makes for good controversy for a documentary. So go ahead and put that stuff out there. Even though there's no mystery whatsoever with this gun, none. Okay. There's a paper trail of everything that has to do with this gun, except there's an internet piece of paper that's actually fabricated and fictitious, saying that there's some internal document claiming that this gun was the one to kill Tupac. Not true. We found that gun, or more specifically, Detective Tim Brennan found the gun when he was invited to our task force, and he said, hey, we've got all of these untested guns that were seized back in the mid-90s in Compton from gang members and various sources, and we said, hey, go back and go through all those untested guns and look for 9mm connected to Biggie or 40 caliber Glocks connected to Tupac, and let's test them. So he stumbled upon a gun that had been seized in evidence back in 96 or 97, whatever it is, after Tupac's murder. The gun was recovered in the backyard of a girlfriend of a guy named Corey Edwards, who's a Southside Crip associated with Orlando Anderson and Keith D. And he happened to also be in Vegas and was part of the Southside Crip entourage in Vegas back in 1996 when Tupac was shot. And there was a gun recovered, 40 caliber Glock, in the backyard of his girlfriend's dad's house. So we're like, shit, that's interesting. Let's see if we can connect it to the Southside Crips. If we're connected to the Tupac murder. Mm-hmm. So we bring the gun in, the LAPD lab, we fingerprint it, and try to get DNA off of it, and then we send it over to the firearms unit where they test fire it. Mm-hmm. Well, after they test fire it, they get the casing gets ejected. We know that there's casings in the Tupac murder, and both of those images, the photographic image of the casing in the Tupac murder and the photographic image of the casing of the gun we just recovered, that we're just uploading, those two photographs match. Well, they're shot from the exact same type of gun. Mm-hmm. But a firearms examiner, looking at that under photograph, says, wow, we have a hit. You better go out to Vegas and do a shell comparison. So a hit is just a probability. A hit on these photographs within this system says there's a high probability that this gun and that gun are the same. It's a high probability. So we're excited. We're like, well, this will connect the Tupac murder to the Southside Crips. So we take the gun out to Las Vegas. They have their firearms ballistic expert examine it. But he does a more thorough examination. What he does is he actually takes the casings themselves, not photographs. Mm-hmm. He takes the two casings side by side under a microscope and does a comparison. And he determined under those circumstances, which is the most specific test you can do, mm-hmm. that these casings don't match. The signature on the impression is not the same. This is not a match. Okay. So we're like, okay, that sucks. we're stuck with that information. And so the gun goes back into ATF custody because it's not related to the Tupac murder, so Vegas, doesn't end up keeping it. And we have to accept that. But let's just say it was the gun. Let's just say it was.
Okay.
Where does that get us? There's no DNA. There's no fingerprints on it. All we know is that a gun that was found in a Southside Crips backyard matches Tupac's murder. Well, we already know the Southside Crips did this.
Right.
It doesn't tell us who or which one.
Mm-hmm.
So this whole thing about this gun having this major importance is way overstated. We don't need the gun to know that Southside Crips were responsible for the shooting of Tupac Shakur.
Mm-hmm.
The gun doesn't tell us who pulled the trigger.
Okay.
So that it's not of this tremendous value. It's just something interesting that would have corroborated information that we were also getting. But it wasn't. It certainly wasn't the smoking gun.
Okay. Now
I think a little half there threw it over the fence.
A little half dad threw it over the fence. Okay. Now check this out. Okay. Now I want to ask you about one of your old cases. Okay. Where are we? I'm trying to find the question. Someone had it up here earlier. Okay. Okay. Like I say, I'm going to ask them, put them on the table. If you don't want to answer them, you don't have to answer them.
Just ask.
Okay.
Just ask. We don't run for nothing.
Okay, someone told me to ask you, okay, why should we trust you? Why should we trust Greg Kading after the fact of you allegedly lied on stand during testifying against someone in court? And this is all in the same question, and it's asking about allegedly you pointed a gun at a 6-month-old child while looking for a suspect named Judy, while working crash, and Judy was in jail.
Tell Shelby 187 to shut up.
No, listen, I want to answer these questions. They're good questions, actually. And if people are confused and they want clarification, then by all means, let's answer these questions. So, regarding the George Torres case. George Torres case is a big federal investigation I was involved in prior to the Biggie Smalls investigation in 2006. So, it was a racketeering investigation. There was a lot of components to it: murders, extortion, drugs, all types of stuff. Really big case. Even bigger, actually, as far as the amount of manpower that was devoted to it than the Biggie and Tupac cases. So I'm involved in this, and I write a search warrant because George Torres and his employees, what they were doing, when people would go into the markets, he owned a bunch of markets in Los Angeles, and when people would go in and shoplift, and his security would grab these guys as they're leaving the market. What they would do is grab them, take them to the back of the store, and then depending on what the amount of the stolen goods was, let's say it's $10 worth of stolen goods, they would say, we're not calling the police, but we're not releasing you until you have somebody come down here and pay 10 times the amount of these stolen goods. So you steal something for $10, you don't go home until somebody brings down $100. And most people are like, shit, that's better than going to jail. But it's illegal to do that. You can't do that to the shoplifters. You can't extort money out of them in exchange for not calling the police. So we were aware that this was conduct that was going on for years at his stores, and we're investigating it as an extortion. And so I write a search warrant. And in my search warrant, I made some mistakes. Keep in mind, at this point in time, I'd written 200 search warrants. And I never had my search warrants questioned, and I got complacent. So I wrote in my search warrant that a person I interviewed said, yeah, it's our procedure to do this with juveniles that are arrested for shoplifting. But the actual tape recording that I had of that interview, it says it's our policy. So I got words like policy versus procedure, or what did you do with that guy versus what did you do to that guy? Because sometimes they would rough these guys up. And one of the people had said, we took him back there and what we did with him and versus what we did to him. And the judge determined that, hey, Greg, You have these tapes at your availability, and yet you write in this, you get these words wrong, and so there's no excuse for that. You should be saying verbatim what these individuals say on this tape, and he's right. I made a mistake. I got complacent. But it was like good faith mistakes. I'm just writing search warrants trying to investigate this stuff. The truth of the matter is, if I'd have just paid attention and gotten it right, then I would have got my desired results. We would have got the search warrant and all the evidence. So I would never have intentionally undermined my own efforts. It doesn't make any sense that I would intentionally lie or anything when it actually works against me. Okay. So, anyway, with all that being said, the judge says I'm going to throw the search warrants out. No problem at all. He throws those out. We continue on with the trial, and the trial takes its own course. That was my involvement as far as that case. There were some other ridiculous claims about bribing witnesses and this and that, but of course, all of the deals made with these witnesses are deals that are made between their attorneys and the U.S. Attorney's Office. I'm just a mouthpiece. If I go down and say, hey, the U.S. Attorney's Office is offering to give you this deal in exchange for your testimony, I'm a representative of the U.S. Attorney's Office at this point. Okay. So you're not bribing anybody. Everybody knows what's up and what's on board, and that's what everybody testified to in the trial, so it's not a big problem. All right, so moving forward, the second component of this question, we're doing a gang sweep. And what used to happen in Los Angeles all the time is that the probation department would go out and they would do probation checks. So let's say a probation officer has 50 guys that he's responsible for keeping tabs of. He'll come to the LAPD and say, listen, I've got 10 different locations. I want to go make sure that all my probationers are in compliance. And I need backup. So you got a probation officer, and we get a whole big group of people on a certain day, and you plan this whole thing out. It's a big operation. You go to all these houses, and you knock on the door, and you go in, and you see if the probationer is living there, is he compliant to the conditions of his probation, blah 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 blah. So we go to a guy's house. His name was Nene. He was I think a four-tray crip, four deuce or four-tray crip. We go to Nene's house, and there's this is so funny. I go to Nene's house, and it's a place I'd been to half a dozen times before. It was a gang hangout. It was an apartment in the back of a house with like 4 units, and there was always gang activity there. So of course, you know how we roll. We're going to come in strong and make sure that we don't have any problems. We get there, knock on the door. A girl doesn't want to let us in. We're like, sorry, we're coming in whether you like it or not. This is the conditions of Nene's probation. He has search and seizure, so we're coming in. Okay. So we go in, and she was already at the door. She's essentially said, nobody's here. Well, I can see through the opening in the door that there's somebody in a pair of boxer shorts sitting on the couch. I don't know if that's Nene or not. I just know I'm going in. So I'm saying, excuse me, we're coming in. We come in. She's protesting, get out of my house, get out of my house. Sorry, we're already here. Sit down, be quiet. We'll be out of here soon. So she sits on the couch. She's got this guy with her who was not Nene, by the way. And as we search these places, you search them not knowing what's going to come out of a corner, or you don't know what's going to be in the next room. So as you imagine, just like on televisions, when we walk through a house, our guns are out. We're ready to deal with whatever we encounter. So I walk into a room, and I sweep the room, which means essentially like when you have a gun and you're searching something, the gun goes where your eyes go. Right? That's how you're trained. The gun goes where your eyes do, so that when you see something that's a threat, you can respond to it. Well, when you go into a room and you sweep the room, you scan across it, I notice, hey, there's a little kid right here sleeping on the bed. Of course, that's no threat to me. I don't even pay attention to it. Just whatever, little kid on the bed, move on, check the closet, look under the bed, I'm out of there. Okay. Well, she then goes on and makes a complaint. She goes on and makes a complaint to the department saying, hey, these guys came in my house without my permission, and they pointed a gun at my baby, and blah, blah, blah. So we all went, he was like, okay, make your claim, we'll investigate it. she files a civil case again with a guy named Steve Yagman, who's an attorney who's notorious for suing the police department. That's all he's done with his whole career. And by the way, right after this case, he ended up going to prison for tax evasion. Mm-hmm. So you got this shady attorney who takes the case and files a civil lawsuit against the LAPD, and we go to trial. So we're sitting there in the trial, and they proved beyond any doubt whatsoever that from where she's sitting on the couch, there's no way, shape, or form where she can see down the hall to the left, make a right, and look in a bedroom where I'm searching.
Okay.
So now it's all based on her claims that this guy pointed a gun at my baby. Well, of course, it becomes very obvious that she was never in a position to even see that. And I'm explaining in the court the same way I'm explaining right now. I was like, yeah, I went in a room, there was a baby, and I was scanning to see if Nene was hiding in there. He wasn't. Mm-hmm. But that's it. Search the room, no problem. She runs out of the courthouse. The whole thing gets thrown out of court, and that's all. Mm-hmm. But, of course, there's online, if you look at this claim that she made, people will look at it, instead of doing the research to find out what's behind it, they'll just go, oh, my God, somebody claimed you pointed a gun at a baby. It must be true. So, therefore, Greg points guns at babies.
That's fiscal evil for you. They do that all the time.
So
it's just that stupid.
So basically, trying to get some lawsuit money is what's going on here. Okay, like I said,
and it didn't.
And I know from both sides, from being on both sides of that. Mm-hmm. The first thing you'd be hollering, and the first thing I was hollering when they came in my house was, "Hey, my son is in that room. Mm-hmm. My son is in that room." That'd be the first thing you'd be hollering. So.
Most definitely.
You know, but anyway.
Okay. Now, you know, like I said, I got a tough audience, and they got these questions. So I'm gonna ask this one. Okay, one person asked, okay, with your disciplinary actions, why can we trust you to solve the murders of Tupac and Biggie while clearing crooked cops like David Mack and Rafael Perez?
Well, first of all, you don't need me to tell you what happened in these cases. Just use a little bit of fucking common sense.
Okay.
You know, don't listen to Greg Kading. Don't listen to me. Disregard everything and just use common sense. Mm-hmm. And you realize that the most plausible explanation for any of this is that Orlando Anderson got stomped. He got pissed. They shot Tupac. Suge Knight retaliates against that.
Okay.
All right. So, don't believe me. It doesn't, just...
And a cop, wait a minute, I got to cut off there, because in a cop with only one bad complaint in their jacket, or two or three with the amount of time he had on it, that's nothing. All cops got some type of complaint in their jacket. Now, a stain, that's one thing, but these are unfounded.
Mm-hmm. These are
unfounded complaints.
They're unfounded complaints, and keep in mind, cops deal with conflict. That's what we do. That's what we face every day is conflict. We have, always encountering people at their worst and under desperate situations, and we don't always see things the same way. We don't, have the same understandings of things. So yeah, it's totally natural. You get complaints against you. But if you look at the history of these complaints and what came out of them, you find out that there's nothing. They're just minor procedural things. It's not like David Mack and Rafael Perez who go out there and commit fucking crimes, who are just absolutely, terrible examples of what cops should be like. But the bottom line is that the truth matters. And what I really be putting all this time and energy and effort, and initially my own money, into something where I'm just trying to deceive everybody? I mean, does that make any sense at all? That this is all just a big this is all just a big opportunity for me to do what? I mean, why not?
And I know this from a fact, too. All Greg really was trying to do was get an apology to Miss Wallace, to solve this for Miss Wallace, because that's all he kept coming to me for. The person that I know that had played a part in it was, could you just get that person to apologize to Miss Wallace? This is all I want, and all of this will go away. That's initially all he was trying to do. This was before the murder rap book came out, and all of this. He was on me to try to get someone to apologize.
Okay.
That's very true. And, Reggie, thankfully for him, he was in a position to kind of help us make some real progress in the Biggie case. And I know that he knew a person that was involved. And after having conversations with Miss Wallace was like, okay, so if the shooter's dead and this other person is claiming to have been involved, I would extend my hand of forgiveness if that person would step forward and publicly admit to her involvement. In this case, it's a female. And I will extend my hand of forgiveness. But she has to take responsibility and accountability publicly. There's no criminal charges that are going to be filed because she has a limited immunity clause with the government. So it's really just, it came down to like, if that's all we need to do to kind of settle things and give Miss Wallace some closure, then by all means, man, that's the fucking right thing to do. But we couldn't make it done because this particular female is just too stubborn to understand that.
Okay, let me ask you about Amir Muhammad. Okay, do you honestly think, was he involved, or is there any proof that he was involved somehow in the murder? Let me go back to like I said, Gene Deal. I did an interview with him, and we spoke several times on the phone. And Gene Deal always, and he was very adamant, his story never changed, that Amir Muhammad, as they were leaving out of the Peterson Museum, that Amir Muhammad walked up with his hand in his pocket to Puffy's car first. And Gene looked at him and approached, and he went another way, and he walked away. And as they were driving off, he told his car, that was the car he was in with Puffy, punch this light, keep going. And Big was still there. His car was there. They didn't run that light. And the same guy, who he identified was Amir Muhammad, actually shot and killed Big. And Lil C's, Biggie's cousin, also identified and said this was the guy that did it. What's your take on this?
Gotcha. Okay, so it's all kind of convenient to look at it that way in hindsight, and I get where Eugene's coming from to a certain degree. But Eugene Deal is also playing a pretty, there's a little, sorry about this, but there's a little bit of Kevin Hackey in that. The thing with Eugene, he saw a guy that gave him the creeps, a guy that just made him uncomfortable, this guy in a bow tie, this Nation of Islam guy. Well, it was no secret the Nation of Islam had already had an encounter with Bad Boy the night before, and that the Nation of Islam was providing security at some of the hotels where they were staying at, and that the Nation of Islam was at least one particular guy who happened to be an extremely close associate of Suge Knight, was at the Peterson Auto Museum that night. So if you've already got beef with somebody and you just had a confrontation the night before, well, certainly you're going to be on guard to be looking at them cross-eyed the next night. And then a shooting takes place and you don't know who the hell did it. But now you've already got a conflict with some folks, and it's like, well, he was eyeballing me, he walked by, had his hand in his pocket, whatever. That's all good information. But does that mean that those guys did the killing? I don't know. And then here's the other problem that we have with this thing, is that Eugene Deal, when he identifies this Amir Muhammad that he ultimately identifies in the Biggie and Tupac documentary, years before, Gene Deal had already identified somebody else as Amir Muhammad. He'd already looked at a six-pack of people and said, this is the guy who turned out to be just a guy whose picture was in a six-pack. He had no involvement in anybody. He was a completely irrelevant individual. But Gene Deal says, this is the guy. So years later, after the media and newspapers are all putting Harry Billups out there as the Amir Muhammad, and now Eugene Deal's like, okay, we got this guy's picture in newspapers, blah, blah, blah. And then he looks at him and says, this is the guy. Well, that's worthless because you've already said somebody else is the guy. And not only to mention that when I talked to Eugene Deal, and I was with a guy named Chris Vogel from the LA Weekly, I put Gene Deal on a speakerphone, and three of us were sitting there. I don't think that Gene knew that Chris was sitting in the room with me. But I asked him about it. He goes, I made a mistake, Greg. He goes, I didn't mean to say this is the guy. what I really meant to say during that taped interview was this looks like the guy.
Mm-hmm.
There's a big difference between that. There's a big difference between saying, hey, there's a resemblance, this looks like the guy, versus this is the guy, right?
Right.
So Eugene Deal's been playing this kind of fast and furious game of information. And now what, 20 years later, he comes out and starts making seriously? We have Eugene Deal's entire 2-hour interview.
Mm-hmm.
Which is very valuable. There's a lot of good information in there, and in that, about the Southside Crips and the retaliation that they expected to happen from death row when they came to L.A. There's a lot of good information.
Yeah.
But I think Gene's not being 100% straight with all of this, and I don't know I'm not sure what his current beef is with Puffy and why that's all. Why he's currently coming out with all this.
Mm-hmm.
But Eugene Deal, if he were put on the stand, he would face some very, very difficult cross-examination that would discredit him.
Mm-hmm.
And Greg, just to clear up, because it raised that antenna when I heard you say it, just clear up, but I know better, that you was working on the private side, not as a cop when you had the guy with LA Weekly and you was on that interview. Or was you working as a cop at the time?
No, this was after the fact. So this was like
say that because
like 2011, Chris Vogel was getting ready to write this very comprehensive LA Weekly report on the investigations, and so I was dealing with him.
Yeah. Okay.
And he brought up the question about Gene Deal, and I said, well, let's just call him.
Mm-hmm.
So I called him, got him on the phone, and asked the questions, and those are the responses he gave.
Okay. Oh, wow.
I got nothing against Gene, and,
Oh, no, Gene is a great dude.
Whatever.
Now, let me ask you this, Greg. Now, okay, there's so much that's going on with a lot of shit that's been leaked to the media, to the public, okay, about this unsolved murder case of Tupac and Biggie, okay. Is there anything that's in those files that the public has no knowledge to and don't know nothing about, that's just only the cops and the killers would know about, or is everything is just out in the public information?
Well, I guess it depends on how deeply you've researched this. I'd say in general, yeah, there's something which I'm about to tell you that is not generally known, and it's interesting, it's compelling. I don't think you can draw conclusions from it, but it's still nonetheless, it's information that probably should have been looked into. But there are some people that dig deep into this and are aware of this. Mm-hmm. And so let's go back to this Nation of Islam component to the Biggie murder.
Mm-hmm.
There's a guy there at that night who was an associate of Suge Knight's, and we've got several different people who identified him. He matches the description of not only the composite, but he matches the description to a certain degree of the guy that Gene Deal saw. The real individual's several inches taller, but, Gene's a big guy, so another big guy who's, like 6'5", may not be perceived as... Anyways, all the technicalities aside, there's an individual named Shaheed Mohammed. Shaheed Mohammed is an associate of Suge Knight. Shaheed.
Yes.
And, so we know he's there that night. He's in a suit and a bow tie, and very likely that he might have been a guy that was looking across, and, he's a prominent member of the Nation of Islam out here in Los Angeles.
He's a captain out here. Yeah,
he's a captain out here, and so, if there's an issue between Nation of Islam here on the West Coast and Bad Boy or whatever had taken place the night before backstage, he certainly would be in a position to probably know about that and be, handling it. So Shaheed's there. I believe that maybe he was misidentified as the individual, or maybe he was identified as the individual Eugene Deal saw. But that's the extent of it. We know he was a close associate of Suge Knight. He was somebody who had kind of done interference type of work on behalf of Suge before when there's been conflicts. Shaheed was kind of a fixer, for lack of a better term.
Mm-hmm.
And so who knows? We don't know that, our conclusions are that Poochie Fowles, Wardell Fowles, Poochie from the Blood Gang, was the shooter. But we don't necessarily believe that he was there acting on his own. You know, maybe there's a spotter. Maybe there's somebody else communicating with him. Maybe there's somebody in the garage who says, hey, Biggie's in the second SUV passenger seat. We don't know. So we can't go out and make that claim because we don't have evidence to support it. But it's also a possibility that probably should have been looked into. Poochie would have needed somebody to tell him which car Biggie was in order to set himself up for the shooting.
Yeah.
So who is that? We don't know.
Okay. Now, at any given time, did Death Row have any control over the LAPD?
Death Row?
Yes, Death Row Records. This is a question that someone asked.
Well, I don't think there's. I don't think there's.
I wish I did have some control over it.
Yeah,
I had one LAPD cop that worked for me, Richard McCulley. God, oh. Well, go ahead, Greg. You can answer it.
Yeah, so, you know, first of all, good luck trying to control the LAPD. Yeah, right.
A regular cop from Compton.
Yeah. So, as far as having guys working, you know, we knew that Richard McCauley, the LAPD knew that Richard McCauley was working for Right Way Investigative Services, and you know, we knew this also because Reggie had told us when he was interviewed. He says, "This guy works for me." And so, you know, it's on Richard McCauley to make things right with the LAPD if he's going to be doing that type of off-duty work. Well, the LAPD said, no, Rich, not cool, ain't happening. You're not getting a work permit to do this type of work. It's a conflict of interest. And so Rich McCauley said, okay, fine, I won't. But then he continued to do it. And the LAPD became aware of it, and they disciplined him for it. You know, they threatened to fire him. In fact, he was facing a board of rights before he resigned. And, you know, so we knew about Richard McCauley. And Richard McCauley was being thoroughly investigated for his association with Death Row Records. But aside from him, I think, and Reggie will tell you better than I can, you know, all these guys that are associated with the LAPD were actually cops from other agencies in the LA County. You had guys from, I don't know, like maybe Inglewood or some ex-Compton guys or San Bernardino and some fire reserves. And so there were guys working for Reggie, because if you're an ex-cop and you're going to have a security agency, who do you hire? You want to hire cops.
Okay.
And what people don't know is they had two informants that was working for me. I mean, that task force had slipped in on me from Long Beach PD that was working on a federal task force, and he never came out and said, hey, David Mack or Rafael Perez or any of them was working for me. Kevin Hackey said he saw him around, but I think that was after he was coached by a documentary, which he said he saw him at the Christmas party, which I think Sharika rebutted that, and I know they never worked for me or wasn't at a Christmas party, because it just don't make sense for me to hire one of Kevin Gaines' friends to come and work for me or be around at a Christmas party hanging out with us. And we especially wouldn't have no guy walking around in a red suit trying to be like Suge, smoking a cigar, hanging around. So it just don't make sense.
Okay, now here's
the whole thing's pretty stupid.
Now I gotta ask this question, and I might get some blowback and some hate for this shit, but goddamn it, I don't give a fuck, because we are the rawest motherfucking podcast show, and we gonna ask questions, and I want to ask the questions that the people want to know. Now, what is going to make us, out of all these documentaries we saw, all these shows about Tupac and Biggie and Tupac, what makes Unsolved better than Battle for Compton? What's going to be different from Unsolved and Battle for Compton?
Well, what's going to make it different is because, well, they're different stories to begin with.
Okay.
And, you know, NWA is its own story, and Biggie and Tupac, they're their own story. So one's not necessarily better than the other. They're just different stories. So there's a difference right there. And then, of course, you've got a feature film where you're trying to stuff years of information into a 90-minute program, where Unsolved is taking 10 hours, 10 episodes to kind of lay things out and give people, you know, a slower, more methodical understanding of what took place during these investigations. And so it's just a different way of presenting information. And this is a scripted series.
Okay.
And, with great actors and great directors and great writers. And so it's just a different way of seeing things. But it's a way of telling this story that's never been done before. It's not a documentary form. It's not a feature film like All Eyes on Me. We're taking our time to really try to lay things out and help people understand what took place, not only during the investigations in the 90s, but during the investigation in the 2000s, and also about the friendship and then the failing of that friendship between Tupac and Biggie. Mm-hmm. So we're telling three different stories within this project, and I think people are just going to be like, "Wow, they're going to learn a lot, but they're also going to be tremendously entertained."
Okay.
Plus, one is a true story, and the other one is a science fictional.
Okay, so which one is the real one and which one is the fictional? We want to hear.
Well, if I can answer, I'm not going to speak on behalf of NWA. I don't know that story that well. I don't know what.
We're talking about Battle for Compton and Murder Rap. Is Murder Rap the fictional and Battle for Compton the real deal, or is Murder Rap the real deal and Battle for Compton fictional? Which one?
Well, let me ask you this.
Yes.
If you end up with cancer.
Yes.
Right.
Oh, I don't.
Do you go to an oncologist? I got you, man. But do you go to an oncologist who understands and has researched and studied and got experience dealing with this subject, or do you go to a veterinarian? What do you do?
I'm going to the motherfucker who gonna save my life, who got the most experience of handling cancer.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Yeah. If you're sick, you go to a doctor. Mm-hmm. If you want to know what happens in an investigation, talk to investigators. But you don't gain a lot by having cancer and then saying, I think I'm going to listen to the dentist. Mm-hmm. And that's the difference. You have these guys that are self-proclaimed journalists or wannabe investigators, and, they don't even understand the nuances of all of this. Okay. They don't know, none of us have ever sat down and handled a gang murder. None of them have wrote search warrants in order to pursue drug investigations, which was a big component of this thing. None of them understand how to process a crime scene. So why are you listening to guys who have no authority on the subject? Okay. So that's the difference. You've got a project where you've got guys that, are well, I was going to say armchair, but in this case more like wheelchair investigators, versus guys who have established themselves and proven themselves and have the experience to explain what took place during these cases.
Okay. Now, I feel you. Okay. Now, have you ever watched Battle for Compton? Have you ever sat down and watched it?
I didn't know it was a show. I thought it was a book. I didn't even know it was a television.
Oh, okay.
It was a DVD.
Yeah, it was on,
was it?
Yeah,
I didn't know
they put it out on DVD.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. No, I didn't know that.
Okay. Well,
ain't nobody bought that shit.
Well, that's a no, people. He didn't watch it. For the one who asked, did he watch it? No, he didn't watch it. Okay. Okay. Now, with your show, your 10-part series, you can't say mini series because that's a little bit longer than a mini series. Is the Wallace family or the Shakur family seeing any of the proceeds off of this?
So I don't really know how things work at the administrative or executive level. I don't know. I know that people had a tremendous amount of interaction with Valletta. As a matter of fact, we have a character with a phenomenal actress who's portraying Valletta. And my favorite scene in the whole series is one in which Valletta and Russell Poole sit down and talk about Biggie's murder. It's one of the most profound scenes in the whole series. But yeah, people were reaching out to her, including the actress portraying her, and then as far as the Shakur component of this, we had Mopreme was on set, and he was involved in giving his ideas and his understandings, and he's a great guy to kind of glean insights from, and so we had a relationship to a certain degree with the families of these victims. And as far as proceeds in that, I don't know how all that works, man. I probably won't see proceeds, so who knows?
Okay.
So I honestly don't know how all that works.
Okay.
You heard that line. That's a lie. I ain't going to buy that one, real.
Nah, it's a
Well, no.
You're getting a little piece of that pie.
Hold on.
I ain't buying that one.
Nah.
Let me qualify this. Let me qualify this. When they talk about and you probably know this too, Reggie, coming from the music industry, when they talk about back end royalties,
oh, okay.
That shit is, what's the that stuff doesn't ever come to fruition. That's just like something that's in a contract that you hope for but never see, right?
Yeah, that's true.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, and even in the NFL now with the contracts, you just get you only really pretty much get your upfront money. You never really get that other check. Yeah.
Okay.
But anyway.
Well, who knows?
Yeah.
Anyways.
We're gonna be looking forward. Is there anything you want to tell us? Any details you want to go into about this? The 10-part series. Then we're gonna be pleased with it, and it's gonna be a learning experience. I mean, what are we gonna walk away with because I was very disappointed with. I'm not gonna lie. What I saw on A&E with Ben Crump, I was very disappointed with that. The Fox was cool, but A&E I was very disappointed how they left us at the end. It was some bullshit. Are we going to be disappointed? Am I going to be disappointed the same way after I see episode 10 of Murder Rap?
No, you're not. You're going to go, wow, that is one of the. I don't know if you enjoyed People versus OJ. It was highly acclaimed.
Yeah, I love that.
And okay, so you have that style and that insight, and we went out of our way to make sure that the most qualified people to tell this story were involved, and we had directors that took this story to heart. Like, it was so meaningful for them to be able to tell this story and wanting to get it right. And so everybody had such a deep personal commitment to this story that I think that's going to reflect when you watch this. Everybody was all in, and from our music director who had an association with these people, to our primary director Anthony Hemingway, an executive producer, and Kyle Long, the creator. Everybody had such passion for this. And I think that's going to resonate when you watch the show. People cared about telling the true story, but they also have to take in mind that we have 10 hours, and we have to provide the most entertaining story that we can. So we're compressing time and moving things around, and there's a couple of things that aren't 100% technically accurate, but the overall picture is exactly what I know to be the truth. And so I'm so proud of it and so happy, and I think people are going to love it. I want to add to that, because that comes out on February 27th. I just want to add to that people who are really interested in this story need to also watch the upcoming BET series. It's a 6-hour, 3-episode series called Death Row Chronicles. And I think that you watch that, and you're going to learn a whole lot about the circumstances, the environment of Death Row, the conflicts with Bad Boy, and specifically about the murder of Tupac Shakur and Biggie Smalls. You're going to hear in a documentary style from witnesses that were upfront and personal, including Keefe D. So these two projects, a documentary, a very, very expensive, well-done documentary, and a mini-series, perfectly complement each other. And it's a perfect time to kind of like put the nail in the coffin of this saga.
Yeah, it needs to be, because it's getting out of hand. It's been 22 years. You got everybody old Tupac's alive, and you got the old Tupac's dead. It's all crazy. Now in the Murder Rap, Do you guys show Puffy's involvement in the murder rap series?
You mean the Unsolved series?
The Unsolved. It's my bad. Unsolved series. Yes, the Unsolved series. Is Puffy's involvement
Okay.
been involved, like, interacted in the movie?
Yeah, the guy that portrays Puffy is fantastic. He does such a phenomenal job, and I think that he brings that character to life, and you start to really understand that character. Yeah, we do. We deal with it. But keep in mind when you're watching it that we take a very balanced approach to this whole thing.
Okay.
I come from a background where guys like Reggie, falsely accused of horrific things like committing a murder. Sharitha Knight, a wonderful individual, falsely accused of committing a murder. Harry Billups, his life was fucking destroyed over false allegations of being involved in a murder. And so we try to take a very balanced approach to even beginning to allude to somebody's involvement in a murder. If we know it to be true and we're absolutely confident, we're going to say it. But when there's nuances to it, or there's if it's not a complete picture, then we don't tell the complete picture. Okay. It's just not fair. All of us have the right to live our lives without being falsely accused of things.
Okay.
And when we say to protect and serve, we protect the innocent. And it's just as important for us, cop or not, it's just as important for us to find and identify and prosecute the guilty as it is to identify and exonerate the falsely accused. That's our job.
Okay.
And so, I've already explained Puffy's situation and how there's an understandable situation that he was in, and that he shouldn't be villainized for it. He has he has a responsibility and accountability, but you can't villainize him when you understand what was going on around him.
Oh, you're right. Let me ask you this, Greg.
Well, now if he put out the bounties and and then in the murder rap when he and put out a bond for or solicit a guy for $1 million, I think he has some culpability if he did have the meeting that he allegedly had with Keith Davis at the place.
But Reggie, if people are hunting us down and even involving our families, let's put it.
I'll accept the responsibility when I get popped if I know that I put that out there. The guy in the courtroom? I would. That's just like the guy in the courtroom that goes and jump over and beat up the guy that just raped or killed his kid. He still got to accept the responsibility of jumping over in the courtroom and causing a disturbance, right?
Okay, I feel you, and I don't disagree with that. But at the same time, do you admit to something that ultimately puts you in jail for the rest of your life? And
no, I'll never talk about it.
I wouldn't talk about it either. Let me ask you this, because this is some crazy shit that's been going on the internet. You got your people that believe. You got people that just you can't. Everybody we respect. I respect everybody's opinions and beliefs. You know what I'm saying? Tell me about this alleged bullshit, which I don't believe, bulletproof jersey that Tupac was wearing, because everyone saying, "Oh, there was no blood on this jersey. There was no blood in the BMW, so it was all staged and it was all fake." Let's talk about do you know it? Do you have that alleged bulletproof vest that Tupac was wearing that night? Or Riggs, did you order that alleged bulletproof vest that Tupac had on?
Can I just? I'll respond to that, and I think I can just cut this short.
Yeah, go ahead.
Anybody who's actually, if somebody's believing that and taking that seriously, you can't reach those people. Yeah. So there's nothing that Reggie's going to say or that I'm going to say that's going to change the mind of an irrational thinker. Mm-hmm. So when a person's already coming up with these bizarre ideas and conspiracy theories and inserting all these possibilities into this scenario, it doesn't really matter what we say. Mm-hmm. If we tell them that these things didn't exist or whatever, they're just going to be like, "Oh, bullshit. I already know it's true." So, it's really not even worth the time when you get to that level of irrational thinking.
Okay, you 100% right. Hey, y'all, I know it's getting late, and Greg, I really appreciate this. Maybe we can set something up for you to come back on the show after the Unsolved aired, and maybe the last episode, and we can chop it up and talk about it, and we ask questions like we did here. Reggie can be on the phone, and maybe we can do that.
It would be fun because I want to hear what people think about the guy that's playing Reggie, and then I want to hear about what people think about the guy who's playing me. Because I already know they're going to be like, oh, Greg Kading don't look like no Josh Duhamel. That's for damn
Yeah,
sure.
and I saw the guy that said he playing me on the interview, and he wasn't fat.
Now,
so.
come on, Greg. Come on. Now, we know you going to go find the coolest looking motherfucker to play you, Greg. Now, come on. We know you did that now. Okay, go ahead.
Hey, I just want to say a couple of things that's going on the show. I like to give stuff that's going on that people don't know about.
Go ahead.
Number one, Greg probably don't even know this, but Delph C is one of the supervising music directors on that from the West Side Connection that's helping Harvey with the music for the show. And the Realist got a song that's going to be on there on a couple of the shows called All Eyes on Me.
Shout out to
or something
Realist.
like that. I might even be saying that wrong. But the Realist doing a song on there. And then it's kind of ironic, and Greg might get mad at me for revealing this, but the location manager or something that's been helping, on the set was the guy Clee. That everybody knows. Yeah, Clay.
I saw him every day.
Yeah, that was one of the guys that the guy ran over with Terry Carter when Terry Carter died. So I just like to throw off stuff that people like to talk about that, don't know about stuff, the behind the scenes stuff.
Okay.
So just FYI on that. And then tomorrow, and Greg, I want him to talk a little bit about it because I know we went a little longer. But Mob James, we're going to be interviewing Mob James tomorrow on the live stream.
That's right.
And just so Greg can just talk about it just a little bit to explain who he is.
So Mob he's one of those guys that he's got a very interesting perspective on things, and I love it. I mean, I really appreciate and respect how he looks back in hindsight on what it was like to be essentially the leader of the gang and to be Suge Knight's right-hand guy for a certain amount of time, and to see all the fucking conflict and drama that happened as a result of the Mob Piru's association with Death Row Records. In fact, as some people know, that Mob James's brother, Alton McDonald, they called him Buntry, was one of Suge Knight's closest enforcers and friends, and Buntry was gunned down and killed, and this is Mob James's brother, and so he's up front, close and personal to all this. I feel that he's a guy that is absolutely credible, and you ought to listen closely to what he has to say, and he's just good people, and he's put all that behind him. He's learned from it, and he's hoping other people will too. So you're lucky to have him.
Jimmy Rule's big brother as well.
And
a lot of people ask about. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah,
so that's great.
You guys, you hear that? Mob James will be on the 313 Live show live tomorrow. So you guys stay tuned and tune in, and I'm going to update you guys on that. One more quick thing, Reggie, before we go, Reg. I need you on record. Would you explain to the people how many, and you can name them by name, how many YouTubers and podcasters that you fuck with and you deal with?
I only deal with two, and that's, I deal once with the guys from ASDG, Cool Brothers, but I haven't dealt with them only but once. But the other two is Real from 313 Live Show, and my boy John from Bomb First. I did an interview with JMX, which y'all know, until JMX or whatever his name is apologize and say, Reggie, I was misled. This is the exact words he got to say. Misled by RJ Bonds, and I apologize. We're going to be out for him. So whenever y'all hear RJ Bonds or JMX online, trust me, we're going to be coming with somebody good like a Greg Kading, a Tim Brennan, who's going to be on Bomb First tonight at 7 o'clock, just in case just in case JMX and RJ try to sneak one in on us. because we out to destroy them. I know Real ain't on that page yet, and I'm not asking to be on that page, but Real recognize Real, and that's why I fuck with Real.
Okay, now let me ask you,
Greg. I just wanted to thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for doing this interview for me and Real,
Mm-hmm.
because I got my agenda, and Real just he like to have good content.
Facts. Now let me ask you this.
I love and I love and I just love talking about this stuff. So we're all good.
Okay. Now, Reg, one more question. I'm gonna let you guys get up out of here. Reg, if that meeting was to ever come across where someone called you in your camp and said, "Yo, I got RJ, and RJ want to speak to you privately, and you guys talk about your differences," would you take that call, Reg?
No, we got to do it publicly. RJ been publicly attacking me since 2004, 2005.
Mm-hmm.
Publicly, the only person that I can do something like that with is JMX or JMX. I don't even know how to pronounce his name. But anyway, that's the only person would I take a meeting like that from. Okay. But RJ Bonds, we got to hash this out, and we got to do this in front of everybody, because RJ has attacked me. He calls my dad scumbag, all of that stuff. It's just personal now with RJ, and because he know this stuff is made up. I mean, to believe y'all want to know why Greg have never watched the Battle for Compton and didn't know it was out? Because just to hear the name Danny Patton, scenarios, and the Patton brothers and all that is laughable to us, laughable to anybody that knows the real and all of that. And so it's just like, why are they coming out with this? Why are they putting this? Why are they putting this in people's head? And it hurts. So it's like personal. That's why we say they can't believe. That's what Greg said. You can't believe this. You can't. You just got to be doing it for the money, or for the likes, or the subscribers, or whatever. I don't even know how this game works, but it's something that's monetary that's behind it.
It's a dirty game.
So if you start taking those, if you're taking those claims seriously, I mean, you really need to seriously consider just seeing a mental health physician, man, because it literally are so ridiculous just on the face of them. You look into these claims and spend any time with utilizing logic and reason. It's pathetic. It's sad. And the sad thing is there's young people out there, impressionable people out there
that believe it,
who haven't developed their ability for critical thinking, and they buy into it, and they're being misled, and to do that, and to knowingly do that, which is what these guys do, it's uncool. It's just uncool.
And I don't hate on those people, because if that's all the music that you're getting, then that's what you're gonna like. But then it's not until you start hearing other music, then you start saying, "Oh, well, wait a minute, I like this music better." Mm-hmm. And so I understand why subscribers do that. So I'm just upset and disappointed at the people that's putting that out.
Right.
Okay. Well,
you start to take a few minutes to start understanding narcissistic behavior and narcissistic personality disorders, and you start realizing, why these guys don't accept reality for what it actually is, and they create one instead, and it serves their psyche. So I don't think they're going away anytime soon, but at the same time, who wants to spend any time involved with that?
Hey, Gray, but they've been quiet as a mouse for about 2 weeks, for about a week now. Quiet. Only thing they did was mess with Suge Knight attorney for the last week and a half.
Awesome.
That was breaking news. And the bad thing about they were doing breaking news when the attorneys was getting released. That's what was funny to me.
I gotta thank D Block, because D Block got my ass up out of bed at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning with that one. He blew me up like, "Yo, Suge's attorney just got locked up." I'm like, niggas 5 something in the morning, but he on it though. That's my dude. He always on it. And shout out to D Block. always holding the chat room down, keeping the suckers in their place, getting rid of them and getting them up out of here, and only keeping the family, the true family, and the loved ones up in here. And salute you, D Block. Everybody salute D Block because he's doing a damn good job. And like I say, Reggie and Greg, man.
What up, Big Block?
I appreciate you guys, and thank you for coming on the show. You gave a hell of an interview, and hey, if whoever didn't like it, that means you didn't send the questions over for me to ask, and it's like a fucking election. If you don't vote, then shit, what you say don't matter. All right, peace and love, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm out of here. I'm gonna shut this down, and I'll stay in the live chat with y'all as long as I can, and then we out of here. Okay.